With the recent passing of actor Roger Moore, who played James Bond in 7 films between 1973 and 1985, it's a good time to look back at his on-screen legacy. Moore's movies stretched the escalating campiness and gadgetry of the Sean Connery era to its logical extreme. Lasers. Space. Both in the same movie. But it's a mistake to write off these gadgets as mere visual gags or special effects. If you look at the history of James Bond gadgets through the Moore era and beyond, you find something far more compelling, a future-forward look of the technological ideals of different decades, and a real showcase for emerging technologies. In many ways, Bond movies were like technology conventions, displaying prototypes to the masses long before they reached mass adoption. And I mean this literally, rather than using movie magic to pass a piece of plastic or fiberglass as a futuristic tool. Bond producers of the Moore and Connery eras would frequently employ actual, working versions of these devices. Looking back at these films today, you may not even notice this. These prototypes represented devices that are now so widespread or obsolete, that a modern audience may not even register them as a Bond gadget. In 1963's For Russia with Love, Sean Connery's Bond is interrupted from a romantic picnic by the buzz of a bulky wireless pager long before the public could buy them. The one you see was a fully functioning prototype pager that was borrowed for the film. Meg Simmons, the archive director at EN Productions, which produced almost every Bond movie, told me while I was reporting a story for Maxim a few years back. Today, pagers seem positively prehistoric. But this rudimentary wireless communication must have seemed like magic to audiences of the time. And the one that made it on screen was one of the very first that had ever been built. Which brings us to the jetpack. With 1965's Thunderball, images of Sean Connery wearing a jetpack featured heavily in the movie's marketing, and served as a splashy centerpiece to the Goldfinger follow-up. In the movie, audiences were treated to scenes of Bond strapping on this futuristic flying device, and using it to fly far away from gun-toting baddies. Watching the film today, the jetpack scene is utterly ridiculous, and positively cartoony. It was also completely real. What was shown on screen was no special effect, but rather a real pilot strapping on a hydrogen peroxide-powered device called the Bell rocket belt. They borrowed a prototype from the inventors and they really flew it, Simmons told me. The test pilot wouldn't do it without a helmet because it was so dangerous, so they had to reshoot Connery's scenes with this fairly unflattering helmet to make it match. This is the fundamental paradox of the Bond films of the 1960s and 70s that makes their portrayal of technology so fascinating. These movies were campy, cartoony, and filled with strange and wonderful impossibilities. But they also express an unseen desire to, at least in some occasions, show us something real about our technological future, a look at what toys and tools might be just around the corner. And the fact that some of these devices are now everywhere, or, like the pager, have already run their course, shows that the Bond movies actually had a pretty good track record in this regard. And while jetpacks may not have made the cut into a widespread consumer product, knowing that the one shown in the film is actually real makes it impossible not to watch the 1965 movie without a huge amount of awe. After all, I don't think anybody doubts that if that movie was made today, it'd be CG all the way.